Thank you for joining us today in episode 74 of the Pool Chasers podcast. As always, our mission is to help educate and inspire in the form of a podcast. Before we get into the episode, I wanted to remind you that Pool Chasers live podcast tour has begun. We have 3 stops coming up in January, and those are Phoenix, Houston, and Atlantic City. Tickets are free, so sign up now at poolchasers.com/events or click the link in the write-up below. In this episode, we sat down with Jeff, Ryan, Randy, and Brian from Pentair to discuss variable speed technology and the Pentair Intelliflo. This was the most people we've ever had on an episode, so there was a ton of knowledge shared between them. I actually remember a time when we did not know much about variable speed technology or the Department of Energy. We were often confused on all the pump laws that were out there. After recording with these gentlemen, we had a much better understanding about both of these topics and the importance that some of the upcoming changes will bring to the industry. The guys also share some insights on how to explain the energy saving benefits to a customer and give us some great analogies to help improve your pump sales. We have always wanted to do a pump episode, so we're excited to share it with you guys. Please enjoy this episode with Jeff Farlow, Ryan Weaver, Rodney McCall, and Brian King from Pentair. Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers Podcast.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Can you please introduce yourself and what your role at Pentair is?
Hi, I'm Jeff Farlow. I'm Pentair's Program Manager of Energy Initiatives. So in that role, I do a lot of work with utility companies to help implement and develop incentive programs for our swimming pool equipment. I also do work with Department of Energy, EPA Energy Star programs, anything on the regulatory side associated with energy. It's typically what I'm focusing on.
Nice. And how did you get into industry and working with Pentair?
Well, I started on the technical side, actually in the Navy. I was an electrician and reactor operator on submarines back in the day. And after that, I went to work for an electric motor and variable speed drive test lab, where we helped large industrial and commercial clients implement variable speed drive programs into their manufacturing process. Pentair actually hired me as a motor guy. That was in 2005, right as we were launching the Intelliflo variable speed pump. And so I quickly evolved into a role there to help residential customers adopt the technology the way I'd helped industrial and commercial customers in the previous life.
Nice. Were you in the Navy?
I was in the Navy, 6 years in the Navy on subs. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
I am Ryan Weaver, Group Product Manager for Pumps and Filters. So basically, from a product standpoint, everything from concept to commercialization to end of life related to pumps and filters. I manage all that.
Nice. How did you get into industry?
Kind of interesting. So originally I worked at IBM as a product manager for microelectronics. Wanted to do something a little more hands-on, so I got into building products where I was a product manager for building products. And then while there, I was approached from Pentair, swimming pool industry. Thought it was really cool. In the backyard still, which was cool. So I gave it a shot and been here ever since. Been here 12 years now.
Yeah, and did you see a lot of similarities between IBM and Pentair?
At the time, no. Now, yes. Within microelectronics, we made processors that went in switches, routers, etc. And with our products evolving now with the new technologies, IoT, the processing power we do with our pumps and some of our other products, obviously those past experiences with the end consumer and the customers and what they expect are paying dividends now.
Hi, my name is Brian King, and I'm the project manager for the training team. And what that entails is working with product management and the new product development team on new products. So as new products come down and are launched into the marketplace, we provide the training materials and videos for the service professional out in the field.
I'm Rodney McCall with Pentair. I'm the IoT product manager for Pentair, and the reason I'm here in this discussion today is talk about Intelliflo. I was the Intelliflo field application specialist when the Intelliflo came out. I started in 2006 as the application specialist. So my job was to teach guys about the technology and how to take advantage of the energy savings and how to program the pump and put it on and make it work like it should.
It must have been like a big task to talk to these guys about transitioning into variable speeds. How was that process?
the technology was so different. We were going from a single speed pump to something that guys were not familiar with. And I think it took the industry a pretty good while to really jump on and use the product. But being the front man for Intelliflo was one of the best jobs I've ever had. I mean, it was a flagship product for Pentair at the time, and just huge innovation for the industry. So I was felt like a rock star.
Was it easier getting that point across to them when you started discussing the financial benefits? Because this is a completely new product going into the industry where you're saving energy, saving money for the customer, but this is also not in any backyards, and there's millions of pools out there that you can really kind of take advantage of that.
That was a big part of the job is, a lot of resistance from the industry. And I just remember people saying, I will never be able to sell a $1,500 pump. I mean, there's no way. Why is somebody going to spend that much more money on it? And the energy savings was really, the pump pays for itself in energy savings. And I think training guys to be able to get that across to consumers, we did, Pentair had a big energy audit program where we went out and trained guys on how to sell the product. So, first it was getting people to believe in the energy savings. And then the second part was training guys how to do that, when you had to train them a little bit about electricity, kilowatt hours and that kind of thing. So it was a big training process, but, once guys understood that the benefits, and got able to be able to sell it to the consumer, then it really took off.
There was a tall order to change that mindset in the industry. Typically, if you're trying to sell somebody a pool, you would not mention how much their electricity bill is going to be going up as a result of them putting that pool in their backyard. So it was almost a taboo topic. And what we did was bring that topic to the forefront so that it became a selling tool then, as they were looking to differentiate themselves in the market. I can build you a pool that's going to use just a minimal amount of energy and give you the opportunity to save a ton.
Right. And I'm sure we're going to get into it in the episode, but how difficult is that, just communicating that technology to a state, to a country, that let's put together these rebates? I mean, are you a part of that?
I have been a part of that, yeah. And if you think about the traditional utility model, where their core business is to generate kilowatt hours of energy and sell them, and now they're going to pay you money to use less of what it is that they make and sell. That was a business model that would pretty much eliminate most of us in the pool industry if we tried to operate our business like that. So it's a different mindset when you help people understand that by saving energy, you avoid having to build that new power plant, and building that new power plant is what's really, really expensive. It's much more cost effective for a utility to say, here's $200, save me from having to do that. The finances really sort of work out in their favor.
Right. And it's almost the same as when, I know California, when they were having the drought, you would get a rebate as well if you would get your grass removed and have artificial grass installed. So there's things like that might be saving the state money, and everybody kind of wins. It's really cool.
Well, thank you guys for sharing all of that. Before we jump into the Intelliflo fully, can you just back it up a little bit and explain what variable speed technology is, and maybe the best way to explain that to a customer?
Sure. So when you think of variable speed and you think about pool pumps, the traditional pool pump is running wide open all day long. It's kind of like you're running your car max RPMs, no matter where you're going, just nonstop. Well, variable speed is essentially the ability to slow that down to the speed that you want. So slowing the amount of RPMs that your motor runs, or how fast your motor runs, to optimize your performance for what you're trying to accomplish. So if you think about it, let's say you're running somewhere, right? And you're going wide open, you're just killing yourself, right? So the ability to slow it down, slow the speed down, slow the pump down to maximize what you're doing helps so much. It helps reduce the energy cost. It helps maximize the performance of your pool in general. So that's one of the two large benefits of it.
I think one of the things about a single speed pump is many times the single speed pump gets the job of moving all the water in the pool through the filter in a fairly short period of time, running at 3,450 RPM on average, and spreading the job of the filter pump out over a longer period of time. Now you're filtering the pool, you're skimming the pool, you're mixing sanitizer in the pool. There's just a lot of benefits, not to mention, a lot of times when we installed these pumps, the energy savings is great, but the instant gratification is how quiet the pump is, and you just don't hear it. And I think a lot of times what I would tell guys is if you can still hear the pump running, you don't have it tuned in to the right speed yet.
Well, in that same regards, if you think about what a single speed pump traditionally, a lot of time people would run it for a short period of time, run it fast, they get there, hey, I'm turning over that pool, but then that pump would be off. And you've got stagnant water sitting there for an extended period of time. Whereas in variable speed, obviously, being able to run it at slower speeds, constant movement of the water, there's just a bunch of additional benefits associated with that.
I think we actually still struggle with explaining that to customers, because even when we were trying to say you need to run it for 20 hours, them understanding that is still a big hurdle, I think, and out there, at least that we've seen. It's just they don't get that I can run it for 20 hours and save money instead of running it for 8.
Well, one way to think about that, maybe think of your air conditioning unit. If you cut your air conditioning unit off during the day and then you want to cool it down at night, you got to run it longer, harder, it takes more money, versus if you set it at a temperature where it's regulating itself through the day to get you that constant performance. It's a very similar concept in that, where being able, where you're not adjusting going to the highs to the lows, but steady state helps with that savings.
When I was training folks on the technology, if I could walk away with the key message, just run it slower and run it longer. That, to me, it was just that basic. That is what the technology allows us to do. I like to correlate it to a race car. We use big horsepower pumps on our pool, and we may need that horsepower to do that demanding job, maybe backwashing that filter once every 2 weeks for 5 or 10 minutes. But just the job of filtering our pool daily, it takes nowhere near that kind of horsepower. And related to participating at the drag strip, and that first Friday of every month, I need a dragster, and I want to be competitive, but I can only have one car. And so I end up being competitive Friday night, but as soon as I pull off the track, I'm using my dragster to go back and forth to work and back and forth to the grocery store. Whereas variable speed lets us have that dragster on the Friday night when we need to be competitive, but as soon as we hit the finish line, we're now converting it to a Prius to spend the rest of our month just going efficiently back and forth to work, because we're not in a hurry to get to the grocery store. We can take a little time to do that. So that's how I like to think of the variable speed technology.
Look at the physics of it. You cut your speed in half, you cut your flow in half, right? It's proportional. But you cut the resistance through the system to a quarter of what it was. And the energy use is cut to an eighth of what it was. So it's actually, the savings is huge just by cutting your speed in half.
That's awesome explanations. I think that will go a long way with explaining it to customers too. I think they definitely understand those, comparisons. So thank you guys for that. So one of the topics that kind of comes up a lot is the Department of Energy. Can you talk about the Department of Energy regulations regarding variable speed pumps and some of the things listeners need to be aware of?
Sure, I'll take that one. So the Department of Energy is responsible for developing minimum efficiency standards for a lot of appliances. We've actually had swimming pool gas heaters federally regulated for years now, well over a decade or two. And we're currently 82% is the minimum efficiency level for gas pool heaters. In about 2014, Department of Energy embarked on an initiative to regulate pumps. And this was all sorts of pumps, vast range of pumps, hundreds of horsepowers and thousands of gallons was this scope of the commercial industrial pump rule. During that process, pretty early on, pump industry said these pool pumps, because it was intended to include pool pumps, those folks said these pool pumps are very different. They have their own industry, they have their own test metrics, and you really need to carve them out and treat them separately. And so DOE did that. We embarked on a process to regulate dedicated purpose pool pumps. We completed that effort in January of 2017, and we have about 5 years before that gets implemented. Actually, the implementation date is July 19, 2021. that's when the efforts of this DOE regulation are going to go into effect. We had a broad range of products that we wanted to call pool pumps. The idea was that we wanted to control our own destiny, and as many products as we could fit under our umbrella, that let us control them rather than the commercial industrial pump industry control them, because pumps were going to get regulated. Doesn't mean we have to require performance requirements or have to have regulations on them, but we wanted that vast product range under our control. So we included things like spa pumps, rigid hot tub pumps, the small little pumps that would go on a Walmart inflatable pool. Those were all under our control. In the end, we decided to really put performance requirements on our in-ground pumps, our above-ground pumps, and pressure cleaner booster pumps. Those are really the ones where the core amount of effort was focused. An example would be the small pumps for I would say at a Walmart, the inflatable pumps. The only requirement we put on those was that they simply had to have a time clock. Right now, those things get plugged in, they run 24/7. So simply making the manufacturer include a time clock with those was the critical step. Really, the in-ground pumps were the ones that got the biggest focus. We split those pumps into two different categories, big ones and small ones. That line of differentiation is about 1 horsepower. 1 horsepower and below were regulated such that an energy-efficient single-speed pump will probably meet the requirements for those applications. For the larger pumps, 1 horsepower up to about 5 horsepower, those have a performance metric that pretty much only variable speed can meet that requirement. The law doesn't say it has to be variable speed, but the line in the sand was drawn such that based on today's technology, variable speed is really the only product that is efficient enough to meet that new standard.
So come 2021, single speed pumps should be pretty much a thing of the past.
In July 2021, we as a manufacturer will be prohibited from manufacturing those. And that's a pretty critical point because the supply chain will still be stocked full of that product. I call it the 2 horsepower single speed will still be out there, and there's no limitation on how long it'll take to purge that from the system. But really, the impetus for compliance is really on the manufacturer. We just can no longer manufacture it and no longer make it available. And it can't be imported either into the U.S. market for sale.
One thing is you mentioned single speed pump. So like Jeff was saying, basically less than 1 horsepower has a different metric. And you can get there with other technology than variable speed. So I would not say single speed pumps are going to go completely away. You are looking at more tailored to certain size pools and what they can do from a performance standpoint. So the expectation is that majority of your pool pumps, in-ground pool pumps moving forward, will be variable speed. But there will probably be some of those smaller pools that still can use a smaller single speed pump.
I was going to say, how are people going to be penalized for bypassing a professional and just going to Home Depot or because Home Depot has a ton of single speed pumps that you can go get and put on a pond, waterfall, you can put on a pool, whatever you want to do with it. It's a pump. I'm trying to find out what that conversation for pool professionals is going to look like in 2021, because we didn't know where things sat all the time. Everybody had a different opinion, and we didn't want to say, well, you can't do the cheaper single speed pump. It's illegal. We couldn't go there. You know what I mean? But we're trying to put together a game plan for what that discussion is going to look like in 2021.
Well, as long as it's available in the supply chain, it would be legal to put in a single speed pump. Hopefully by that point, our industry is well versed at selling the benefits of variable speed and being able to convince a consumer that, I may be able to find some of those still on the shelf in distribution, but it's illegal for that product to even be manufactured right now. And once it's gone, it's gone. You'll never see it again. And the reason it was those standards were set into place because the energy savings were so impactful. And Department of Energy decided it was cost effective to force the industry to transition to those variable speeds. They can't do anything that's not beneficial to the consumer, to the end user. That's a cost effective regulation. So it proved itself to be very cost effective.
So even past 2021, if there are still single speed pumps on the market, technically somebody can purchase that pump and have it put on their pool.
That is correct. There's nothing to say that you have to swap out an existing pump, and there's nothing to say that if it's still sitting on the shelf in distribution, it can be purchased. It's up to the manufacturer. As of that date, we can no longer manufacture anything or import anything for sale into the U.S.
Okay.
So it'll take some time.
Yeah.
There will be a transition period.
Because it more seems like it's just kind of a waiting game of this is all, the single speed pumps are just going to phase out, and it's just going to be more of a discussion like I couldn't get my hands on one of those if I tried.
And there will be a situation where maybe a consumer says, well, I was able to get it online. Maybe they found an online retailer would be an example of where there's the wholesale distribution channel was completely purged, but somebody had been stockpiling them. So it would be legal for that to happen. But that we are going to see that phasing out for sure over time. How long it takes, I'm not really sure.
Right. And that's still a really good breakdown. We've never heard it like that before, but that makes a ton of sense. That it just sounds like a ton of effort is being put into just getting it off the market. But at the same time, if it's there, it's there. It's just like anything else.
We want to thank Pentair for sponsoring the show. Here at Pool Chasers, we always try to stay on top of everything pool related, which is why we will be attending Pentair's upcoming webinar on the changes the Department of Energy will be making. These DOE updates will greatly impact your business, which is why Pentair is here to help you navigate and prepare for what's ahead. You can expect some major impact on the elimination of SKUs for hundreds of single-speed pumps, so this is not something you're going to want to miss. By attending the webinar, you're choosing what's best for your customers, and you're going to learn how to make a better profit selling variable speed pumps. Tune in to hear just how these changes will impact you and how to start boosting your sales now. The webinar will be held Wednesday, December 11th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So to register, please click the link in the write-up below.
We're going to kind of go back a little bit because we love to learn, how things, get started and evolve over the years. Can you guys just share with us the story of the Intelliflo?
I can probably talk a little bit about the history of the Intelliflo. The launch, our first product was in 2005, the variable flow pump, the Intelliflo VF. And it was a really smart pump in that you could tell that pump how many gallons of water was in your pool, and then choose an amount of time that you wanted to run the pump, and it would choose the flow to run the pump at. And as the system got dirtier, the pump would ramp up in speed to maintain a certain flow rate. So it was really cool technology. However, it was probably a little bit ahead of its time in that I think the guys in the field found it fairly complicated. So a year later, we came out in 2006 with what the guys you refer to as the 4x160. And we took away the control panel. It just had 4 buttons on it, speed 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you could adjust those and then hold down a button and it ran at that speed. It really simplified the product, and guys weren't afraid of the technology anymore. You could put that on, you could adjust the speed up and let it do its thing. We then came out in, I think it's 2008, in June of 2008, with Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act. We came out with the VS plus SVRS pump. SVRS stands for Suction Vacuum Release System, and we introduced that product in around 2008. That platform that we put that product on, a lot of guys really gravitated to that because it was very easy to program. So then we made another pump that used that platform, that programming menu, and we put it in a variable speed pump. So we brought back the LCD control panel, and so we went from the old 4x160, which was regular variable speed, and then we put a control panel. And the original one had a control panel, a little LCD screen. We put the control panel back on it when we did the next VS pump. Then, we had this variable flow technology, really cool ability to tell the pump that you wanted a certain flow rate, and the product delivered that flow rate. We brought back the VF technology, and now we have the VSF, and you can choose between speed or flow. You can run it in just like the old speed pump. You can do that, or you can put it in flow. What you're trying to do with a swimming pool is get a constant flow through the system. A lot of people, I think, probably realize that they need to clean their filter when the pool turns green. And a lot of times that's just the filter got so dirty that water's just not even passing through it anymore. So the variable flow technology keeps that flow rate constant. As that filter gets dirty or your skimmer basket gets dirty, it maintains that flow rate. So you get a cleaner pool, I think, better experience.
I think where that feature can really play a role for the end consumer is in like water features. They've got a spillover from their spa, they've got a waterfall or laminars, and they want a certain effect, a certain look on their pool. If you tell the pump that you need 28 or 32 gallons a minute to run that feature to look a certain way, well, a week later when the filter gets dirty, that feature no longer looks the same because you're getting less water flow through the system. With the VSF, with the flow portion of that pump, it will speed up the pump to give you the flow and maintain that flow up to 3450.
So let me try to explain this. So while we came out with the VSF, one of the key things is, so as Rodney mentioned, the first pump was the VF. If you think about everything on your pool, it's rated around gallons per minute, flow rates. Variable speed pump today, all the variable speeds, you think of RPMs, 3450, 2000 RPMs. Well, what the heck does that mean? If you really think about it, your car, try to drive your car down the road with just your tachometer. You don't know how fast you're going, especially if you're going uphill or downhill. You don't know. So that first variable flow pump really was, like Rodney said, way ahead of its time, but it wasn't the most intuitive pump to use. It almost did too much. So with the VSF, we wanted to bring that technology where everything is based off flow rate. So let's let people know what their pump's doing, what their pool is doing, how much water they're turning. So we brought it back and made it more intuitive. And variable speed is great. We love variable speed, but like the guys were mentioning, as your filter loads or you have different changes in your system, that pump still runs the same speed. So your flow rates are adjusting even though the pump runs the same speed, so you may not getting that same performance. Well, with variable flow, think of it as like cruise control for your pool. Just like a car, when you set your cruise control on your car, if you're going uphill, you run 35, it adjusts accordingly. If you're going downhill, adjust accordingly. That's what the VSF does. It allows you to set a desired flow rate and then it adjusts appropriately to maintain that flow rate. So you're getting the flow you want. And you think about it, minimum amount of water need to go through heaters, that look on those water features. You can basically set up different programs to say, hey, that's what I need and that's what I'm getting.
Right. So I'm just curious, were you guys the first one to make the variable speed technology?
We weren't the first with variable speed technology. As Jeff mentioned, he worked with companies that were implementing variable speed technology, but we brought it to the swimming pool, that technology to the swimming pool business.
I like to state we were the first with a dedicated variable speed pool pump.
Okay.
I think in general, now this was before my time, but if you looked at it, what I understand is obviously if you think about energy usage, and as we grew as a population in certain areas started to have population growth and energy consumption. If you think about it, and Jeff can quote the numbers, but a pool pump, I think is your second largest consumer of energy at a residence. So obviously being forward thinking to say, hey, we're seeing energy savings taking place in other industries. We understand that obviously from a residential standpoint, we want to have an opportunity here with a piece of equipment that uses a lot of energy. Everybody likes to save money. So there's an opportunity here.
There's also some timing. This was, 2005. If we look at what was going on in the nation, that was a lot of the green movement. Everything was turning green, whether it was conservation of resources or materials or conservation of energy. So the timing was really ideal. It helped make that a receptive message when we just looked at what was going on in society at that time.
Right. That was a good year. That was the year we graduated.
Dare I ask high school, college?
High school. I wonder if that was almost like the gateway product to start thinking about, like, maybe we should be looking at like how things are done in the automotive industry and how things are being in smart technologies being done into homes, like home smart technology. I wonder if that really was the product where it's like, maybe we should be looking outside of, what we're doing. And not that like hiring people in other industries, but it's like, what is going on? What are, people that own homes and pools, what is a part of their like day-to-day life, and how can we bring that into the pools?
Well, as a product manager, one of my key things is understanding how people use our product and looking not only at how they're using here, but looking at other industries and looking at other products they're using within the house or whatever, to say, okay, it's okay to borrow from other stuff and learn. So obviously, when you look at that and think about where a product should be going, you can relate, you can understand how people are using our products, you can see where there are true advantages and where there's disadvantages. So obviously, that's one of the main things when we go out there and gain information, say what are the next products or what should we be investing in the future. We do look at obviously how people use the products, but then also look at other industries to see how people are using other products in other industry. And are there key concepts and core principles there that we need to make sure we're implementing it into our products?
I think Energy Star was another thing that really helped put pool pumps on the map. Utility companies really rely on that Energy Star brand to determine their rebate eligible list, what qualifies for a rebate, because it sort of takes all that qualification off on DOE accredited test labs. That's Energy Star requires third-party testing to be Energy Star. There were about 5, maybe 6 utility rebate programs in the 2007 timeframe. Energy Star launched with pool pumps in 2013. There were maybe 40 programs that had grown over that time. From 2013 to 2015, there were over 100. So that really allowed for some explosive growth of utility incentives around that time frame. So I think 2013 was a critical mass year for really getting the technology into the mainstream.
Right. And another kind of question we have in here, is talking about like why the almond color, what goes into even thinking about what color the product is going to be? Because I don't know if a lot of other people think of products this way, but when you see an Intelliflo, it just feels like a well-made product, as if, I like Apple products. That's what I like about Apple products. It's just the way that they feel like they're going to stand the test of time. And there's something about the color that, goes well with, everything else that we're doing. And just like even the way the buttons, push down and how the display works and all that stuff, it just seemed like there's a lot more going on there than your typical pool pump. How much goes into the R&D and just putting everything together to make, the end product?
You know how many shades of almond there are? It becomes quite an issue to make sure that product always comes out at the same shade almond. I know with the pump we've really had that challenge, but I don't know.
That's pretty crazy. Like thinking about everything, like even down to the shade of that color. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of different things you wouldn't think about, and I'm not going to share all those obviously on this podcast,
yeah, sure.
But understanding, take something like an almond color, and knowing what the background is. Do you want that pump to stand out? Do you want it to blend in with your environment? What's around you? Think of it from a temperature standpoint. Almond doesn't absorb as much heat as black would. There's all sorts of things that go into the product. And also one of the things you'll find out with, especially the Intelliflo and all our variable speed products, we use proprietary technology. You're not going to find that same technology and or a Me Too version of it from someone else. I mean, they're unique to us. We spend a lot of time and effort in developing and researching and testing to make sure we're delivering the best quality products available on the market.
Right, and that's really the answer we were looking for, is that it doesn't just happen. Like the way that you like the way it looks and the way that it feels is because it was well thought out in every area.
And we're constantly looking at it. I mean, just because the product's been out forever was, one of the things that we did with the Intelliflo is we heard people said, hey, we love what you can do with it, but sometimes it's not as intuitive to program as we think it should be. So just hitting little things like that and then working with experts in that area to say, okay, this is what we're trying to do. How can we make slight modifications? We don't want to drastically change at this point in time where we were when we did this, but how can we make subtle changes to make it more intuitive and easier to use and program so that when, as a pool professional, you go up, you're not going, how in the world do I set this thing up? It's pretty straightforward.
Right. You guys done an incredible job.
Is that how the check mark came about?
It is.
Because you guys changed that, and that was a little bit of a getting used to for sure. But
the check mark was some of the other icons on the keypad itself that seemed to be a little more intuitive, like the back button versus some things enter. You'll also notice something as simple as on the screen, you'll have a 4-way directional error. So it lets you know which way on the keypad you can operate, forward or backwards. So you're not hitting arrow key that doesn't do anything. So little subtle things like that don't seem big deal, but we pay attention to it. Same with, you'll notice about how on our products, how when you're as simple as wiring it, where the electrical can come in at to make it easier, because we go out there and say, okay, if I'm out here in 105 degrees pouring down sweat, pool pumps down on the ground, how is the easiest way? Tight environment. How can I get in here and put it together, hook it up real easy with the least amount of pain?
Right.
It's funny you bring up that check mark. We had a lot of meetings about how to change that drive control pad. And I got to the point where talking to customers on the phone day after day, I didn't have to see the keypad. I could tell them exactly what button to push. Press the menu button, press the escape button, press the save button or select button. And then we made those changes, and it took me a little while to get it back again, but definitely the keypad was initially not intuitive. It was as far as where those buttons were. So it was, we met a lot, got a lot of feedback from the field before we made that change. I'm glad you noticed.
So with the newest version being the Intelliflo VSF, can you please explain what the difference is and how to program the pump by flow if they wish to do so?
So from a programming standpoint, again, I wanted to make it intuitive to what they have used to doing in speed. So as far as programming flow, it's as simple as you're setting up your speeds of your program, you have an option. Do you want to select a speed or a flow? And we give them a lot of flexibility. If you think about the Intelliflo, you have 8 programs you can, on the pump that you can set up. And as you're setting up a program, one of the first selections they'll ask you is, do you want a speed or flow? And once you choose flow, it's as simple as the same way you set up an RPM, except now you're setting the flow you want. So it's really that simple and intuitive. We didn't want to change a lot. We wanted it to just basically be one extra keystroke to go from a speed to a flow when you're setting up a program.
So I'm just curious, before you get to programming the pump, we'll just say for flow, for instance, what data, what numbers, what stuff do you need to put into this pump before doing anything? I mean, are you looking to see how many gallons a pool is? Are you looking at all that stuff to put in?
You definitely want to size the pump to the pool. So when this pump is kind of a one size fits all, right? But you do need to make some adjustments within the pump to make sure that it's sized correctly for the environment that you're putting it into. You take a look at a heater. You need at least 40 gallons a minute to run the heater. It's nice to have that ability to put in 40 gallons a minute into the pump and get that heater to fire each and every time. Because as the filter gets dirty, I'm still going to get that 40 gallons a minute. If I do speed, I don't know what speed is 40 gallons a minute in the hydraulic system, right? And even if I knew what the speed was that I needed, if I set that speed a week later, 2 weeks later, that speed isn't giving me the same volume of water any longer because it's got more resistance to fight through the hydraulic system. So I'm getting less gallons per minute. Now the heater might not fire, or the chlorinator might not fire. So it's nice having that ability to program it with flow.
Right. Well said. I was going to say, what are, some more benefits, for a pool professional in setting them up as flow?
Well, one of the things I would say is if you think about every pool's different. They're not hydraulically, they have different TDHs. Everything's a little bit different. One of the things I tell people when you get on your pool is if you get there and you have, depending if you have water features and all different things, is play with the pump. Put it in flow mode, ramp it up and down. Even if you're in speed mode, you can ramp it up and down and then you can see what it's the correlating flow it has. But if you play with it, get the look you want, and then notice, hey, that's what I want for my pool. from a performance standpoint, especially if you're doing water features or if you have, some kind of waterfall, you want a certain look. Take a clean when your pool's clean, when your filter's clean, see what it looks like, note what the flow is on the pump, and then set that pump knowing that you'll have that way. So I don't think you can go in and say, oh, I want this pump to be 30 gallons per minute. I want this to be 40. I mean, you can do that, but what I recommend is each pump, every pool's differently. So play with it a little while to get the look and making sure you're getting the flow through your system you like. Note that and then set the pump to run that.
And I think that's a huge benefit in having like Screen Logic or the IntelliCenter or something like that, is that we can't sit at a pool all day and watch to see if that's working or not. If it's going to get cloudy or turn green, it's probably not going to happen right in front of my eyes. I hope not. That's way too quick. But if those things were to happen, you could really look at the back end data of how long it's running at, the whatever you've put into the pump or into the automation, so that you can really kind of track that data and be like, okay, well, this is how it was doing in this month or this week, and this is what I'm going to leave it at. And if there's any issues, I can kind of make these little adjustments, but it's all there. It's not ever getting lost. Even if you're changing things, you can kind of go back because it's being saved, right?
And not trying to get too technical also, as you think about speed is, like you mentioned, bather load changes, everything changes. So how that system loads during the time, you could have drastically different from one week to the next. Weather, all sorts of things could affect it. The nice thing about that variable flow is once you set it, that pump's going to regulate, so you're getting that flow of water through the pump. Whereas in variable speed from week to week, you could be getting totally different amounts of water through your system. So to your point, along with Screen Logic and others, then you can monitor that and say, okay, now I know maybe I need to increase it 5 gallons a minute or 7 gallons a minute to see, knowing that's a consistent state versus speed. Well, should I ramp it up 100 RPMs? Well, that may be fine this week. But again, depending on load, the amount of flow you get is going to adjust. Whereas variable flow, once you set it, you're getting a set point, and then you can adjust accordingly from that.
Right. That's awesome. Because, even if you were to like deadhead the pump, it's smart enough to shut itself down after a set amount of time, right?
Correct.
So you have a super dirty filter, you have a filled pump basket. Having it set as flow, it's going to adjust that flow rate so that you might see the pressure, drop quite a bit, but it's not going to try to work past it pretty much.
Right. And actually within the pump, with part of this flow technology, we actually have the ability to set pressure limits or speed limits. So if you're worried about situations like that, you can limit how much pressure the pump produces, such that if it's trying to ramp up because you have a deadheaded filter, it can actually set a pressure limit that won't allow it to go to any higher speeds. It hits that pressure and says, hey, I can't go any farther. So
I actually didn't know that.
Yep.
We can set that?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's
comes set at 30
awesome.
PSI. From
You can
the
also
factory.
turn it off, right? Which is, can't you? I thought you could turn
on
that.
flow.
In flow mode, it is implemented. You can't turn it off. But in speed mode, you can turn it on and off.
Okay.
From the factory, the pressure limit is not turned on in speed mode, but you can turn it on.
You'll also find with using flow is over the long run, you're going to save yourself a lot more money, because typically what the service pro will do is if you got a Intelliflo out there, you need at least 30 gallons a minute to get the flow switch to trip. Well, they're going to ramp that up to a speed where they get the green light on the flow switch. Well, then they're going to ramp it up a few hundred more, because they know if they walk away, the filter's going to get dirty over the next week or two. They want to make sure the flow switch is still going to trip properly. So right from the beginning, you're a couple hundred RPMs above what you really need. If I set 30, I know I'm going to get 30. When the filter gets dirty, it will ramp up a little bit higher, still to give me that 30. But over the long run, I'm going to save that little extra bit of money using flow.
And one thing I do want to mention, we mentioned gallons per minute and 30 and everything like that. The VSF uses centralist flow technology. So there are not sensors in there, and I won't go into all the details, but because every pool is different, there's going to be some variation there. But the key point is like I was mentioning it, get the pool performing the way you want, and then note the number, and then set that number, and it will make sure it maintains that.
One of the rules of thumb that I used to teach is go to the pump, press speed 2, which is 1500 RPM. Go to the skimmer and look at the skimmer the weir door inside the skimmer and see if that weir door has dropped down a little bit and you're getting some skimmer action. And if you're not, ramp it up a little bit more. And if you're getting a lot of flow over there, you can probably, do a little bit less. But what I find when I was doing training classes and asking people where they're running their pumps, a lot of times they start at 1500 RPM, and we made that speed 2 for a reason. It's probably a good place to start. And the other thing is what we found is a skimmer, that weird door will drop down if you're getting about 25 gallons per minute through that skimmer, 25 or 30 gallons per minute. That usually is enough to drop that weird door down. So you're skimming.
I think another thing the Flow does, which we found when we were using it, was you can figure out how often filter cleans actually need to be done per pool. And it'll tell you, because when you start to hear that and the pump gets louder and louder, the customer's going to hear it running at basically 34, 50, or 60 gallons per minute. It's running that constantly at that 60 gallons per minute. And that really tells you something's dirty, right? So the filter's dirty. So if you have a pool that has tons of foliage around it, and that filter's getting dirtier quicker, it'll allow you to say, hey, we need to clean your filter every 3 months instead of 6. And that, from a business owner perspective, then you're making sure that pool specifically is running as efficient as possible. And then you're also obviously making the income more that way, but you are taking care of that pool more specific, and it helps because it will ramp up and be loud. I mean, it'll tell them, hey, it's a little bit more of an alert, which some people may not like, but I kind of liked it as a business owner because it really helps you dial in those pools more towards what that pool should be running.
So absolutely, it's going to increase speed, and that is that audio, that increase in speed and the noise is a key indicator that your filter's loading. And look at it. Another little trick you can do if you don't want to do just that is use that pressure limit. And now that pressure is not just for the filter, it's for the whole pool, but you can basically, on a clean filter, you can say, okay, what's the pressure of my system? And you can use that pressure limit to be a way to, okay, once you hit that limit, it's time to clean the filter also. And then obviously with some of our other automation technologies, you can get that warning on your system. So there's ways to identify that, for a homeowner to say, or a service guy say, hey, I'm getting near that limit. I need to go ahead and change that filter or backwash that filter. And interesting, because we have our industry, there's some early adopters, but as a whole, change is met with some resistance sometimes. One of the reasons it's variable speed and flow pump is the speed aspect, and he's in default from the factory. It's set up as a traditional variable speed pump, and then it has this flow in there. So, obviously we teach and want to get people to go to flow because we think there are some real benefits. We know there's some real benefits to it and the technology, but at the same time, we understand there are those people that says, hey, I just want to run it like my old speed. So we give them that option.
And that's cool that there's those options, because it's not like a immediate, like you're just cutting people off right there. But I think we always encourage homeowners, managers to really stay on top of your team and teach them good habits. Because maybe if a repair mechanic doesn't want to do that, maybe it's because he's pressured to hurry up and move on, and nobody's gonna track what's going on with that pool. Because the more time you spend on that pool and track, what some of the issues might be because of the flow, maybe there's some adjustments you need to make, and make those adjustments so that, moving forward, you know what to look for and what to do.
I'm not sure people actually appreciate the fact that you guys did that, but we did, because I understood that you guys took the time and in a room had those discussions about, well, we want to reintroduce this flow, but we don't want to throw off the entire system, right? So it's really cool you ship it the same way you shipped the VSTs, and give that person the option to adapt and grow as time goes.
This is Randy Angel with Randy Angel Designs in Dallas, Texas. As a designer of outdoor living, one of the things I enjoy most is working with incredible industry partners such as Ledge Lounger. I'm always looking for new and exciting products to include in my design presentations that will set my designs apart from the competition. With Ledge Lounger's 3D files available for all their product lines, I can create my spaces around the specific pieces I have in mind for the project. From their more well-known in-water product lines to their new outdoor furniture and games, it's as easy as drag and drop, and my clients get to see my vision with clarity. And do you know what I've come to realize? The more clearly I can present the vision, the more focused my clients are on completing the project as designed. And this means an added revenue stream for my company as we complete more and more Ledge Lounger purchases. Download 3D design resources for Ledge Lounger's full collection at ledgeloungers.com/CAD.
So it's always important for a pool professional to understand the terminology used within the industry. Can you give us a breakdown of the components within the Intelliflo pump and what they're designed to do?
Well, I'll take it from a basic standpoint. Obviously, you have the motor, what's turning the shaft that the impeller is attached to. On top of that motor, what makes it go from a variable speed is the drive. That drive is basically taking the input, be it from the keypad and or our automation system, translating that information into signals that the motor runs. So that's really it from a motor drive standpoint. Now, obviously, as you get into the hydraulics and into the pump, I don't know, Brian, you can take that one from a teaching standpoint, how the best way you found to teach those components to the industry is.
Well, on the wet end, you've got the motor house or the pump housing, right, which encases the volute. And that really, as the impeller turns, you're creating a low pressure area right in front of the impeller. That allows the water to flow from the pool to the pump. It's kind of like taking a straw and sucking some fluid out of a glass. You're creating a low pressure point within that straw, allowing the water to come up the straw. So that low pressure allows the water to come up into the impeller. The impeller then flings that water, creating centrifugal force or kinetic energy. And then the diffuser that's around the impeller takes that energy and kind of turns it back into the fluid itself as static pressure. And that pressure then is what is actually pushing on the water to get it to move through the pressure side of the wet end. And that's how you get the flow through the diffuser and up out of the pump.
It's a really good breakdown. I like the straw analogy too. And if you have a really big straw,
it's funny because we you say that and you laugh, but we do this in our training. And I got this from a trainer who moved on to sales. What he would do is take a nice big McDonald's straw. We know those are nice and big, right? And then he would take these little straws, thin little straws, and he would pick out in the class the smallest person in the class. Give them the big straw. Find the biggest person in the class, give them the little straw, and have them race, sucking on the straw to see how much fluid they could, drink in X amount of time. Every single time the little person would win, right? Just showing you, if you build a poor hydraulic system, you're not going to move much water.
That's great. You should seriously put some straws inside the box with the Intelliflo. Like different.
It's really good. It's really good.
I got 2 Capri Suns here. We got different size straws. I'm going to do a little test with you guys. That's awesome.
Another example I like to use is, we're frequently applying a variable speed pump on an existing pool. And that pool could have a very well-designed hydraulic system or a very poor designed hydraulic system. While the variable speed pump, it can't overcome poor hydraulics, but it'll give us the best case scenario for pumping the water through that system. Give us the optimum ability to move water through that system, whatever that system happens to be.
Right. Thank you, guys. I think the straw analogy kind of, I just think there's never been we've never done a podcast on even what a pump is and how it works exactly. And we're trying to kind of go back a little bit in talking about the history and then get more technical with time. But remember when we first started, which was probably you first started 5-6 years ago, and when doing research, there's a lot of, little things, but they kind of start in the middle and nothing talks about how it works from the very, very beginning. And thank God you worked at a motor shop because you really learned everything. But, when I kind of jumped in, it was like, oh man, and I'm more kind of marketing, but I'm trying to get to know this stuff better. But it's like, dude, where do I start with all this shit?
It's interesting you mentioned that, and I can only imagine what y'all go through on a daily basis as you deal with homeowners, because I have talked to some very intelligent homeowners when I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And one of the basic things is you would be amazed how many times I have to try to explain to them what is their pump and what is their filter to understand what's going on and try to figure out where the issue is. And again, these are extremely intelligent people. They just haven't been exposed to it. And, you know, they're out there and they know that their pool runs water, but when there's something wrong with their equipment, they don't know. And going in there, and so one of the things I'm like, okay, is it, you know, as simple as is it the big thing that is, you know, has a gauge on the top of it, or is it, you know, the little thing that's running that you see a plastic lid that you can see the water on?
Right.
You know, something as simple as that, just to get them to what piece of equipment they're on, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, like draw me a picture of the thing that you think is making a problem, and we'll try to figure this out. Hey, whatever it takes, right?
Yeah.
But I think in explaining it to the customer is a huge piece too. The better they kind of know what they're talking about, it's going to be much easier to get that information across over to you. So they can, if they tell you that the filter's having a problem, you can hopefully at some point feel confident that they know what they're talking about.
One of the analogies I like to use when they're defining the equipment, how important it is the pool, is think of the pump as your heart and the filter as your lungs. And your heart pumps blood throughout your whole body. Well, your pump is pumping blood or pumping water throughout your whole system. Your lungs filters the air that you breathe to make sure it's clean and that your body can control it. And that's what the filter does on the pool system. So I really use the heart and the lungs analogy a lot because everybody can relate to that.
Especially because he's the pump product manager. He thinks that
and the filter.
that the system can't run without the pump, right?
Or the filter. I mean,
What's the IoT of the body?
What good is a pump if you don't have a filter?
So when we go to buy an Intelliflo and open it, you know, what can you explain kind of just what people will see in the box and maybe what we should be aware of and what kind of paperwork maybe they should be giving to the customer?
Well, the first thing I want to make sure they give them is the instruction manual, because there is a lot of time and effort that goes in instruction manuals and trying to make sure people understand that. So one of the first things a pool professional, give that to your homeowner to make sure they have it.
After they read it.
Yes, after they read it. You will find up front, obviously, a lot of important information, and we kind of step through. It has how you program the pump. It talks about, you know, requirements from electrical standpoint, from installation standpoint. It's right there. It's very important to read. There also will be some other paperwork in there regards to how you can set up your warranty online for your product to make sure you register your product and get the warranty going on it. There'll be some other tips associated in the literature package. And then you have the pump itself. One of the things to make sure is with the pumps is a lot of times the pumps will ship with the lids. You know, the lid's not on them. So obviously you want to make sure when they open that up that they get the lid to put on the pool pump. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you're going to open it up and the product's going to be there. Some of our pumps, make sure the union kits, you know, they ship with union kits. Always make sure as a pool professional the union kits are there when you open it up. And if you have any issues, obviously they can contact us in the factory and their representative, and if there's something missing, we'll take care of it.
So what, I mean, before I move on from that, can you explain maybe what the default settings are that the pump comes in?
So the Intelliflo from the factory, there are 4 default speeds like they have always been. Speed 1 and 2 are what we call basically on. They're just, when you hit them, they're going to run those for 20, you know, straight until you cut them off. 3 and 4 on the thing are set up as egg timers. And the reason they're set up as egg timers is because based on certain legislation in different states, there are requirements that you can't run more than a certain amount of time without defaulting back to a speed less than half speed of the pump. So from default 1 and 2, and they're increasing RPMs. So number 1 is the lowest, 2 increases like 750, 1500 on up. But once you get to 3 and 4, they are egg timers, such that if you were to press them, they would run for a limited amount of time and then the pump would stop.
You said they'll run for 24 hours, whatever. They change that whenever when it hits a schedule. Right?
Yes, to answer your question, the answer is yes. So the way it works is basically it accepts the last response. So it runs what it's told to run until it gets a new command, be it from an automation system or a manual press or something other. So depending on how you have it set up, it will run differently, but essentially it takes the last command and runs that. And then when that ends, it says, what should I be doing? And if there's no additional commands, it waits till the next set of commands comes in.
The reason I bring that up is because you think it will run for, if you're like, let's just say you're working on a green pool, and if you set it, you think it's going to run for 24 hours. It doesn't. That's just from experience. The schedule will take over, and then it'll shut off until it gets told to do something else.
One of the things, just to remind everybody, when you press the stop button on an Intelliflo, you have stopped it, and it is not going to run the schedule the next day. So that was something that we ran into a lot early on. So just when you're at a job site, and you can run quick clean, and if you don't press the stop button, it'll go back and run the schedules. But as soon as you press the stop button, the pump will say stop. The LED above the start button will not be lit, and it's not going to run anymore. So make sure before you leave a job site, you put it back in the running schedule mode.
Yeah, that's a lot of the conversations we have with people over the phone, the homeowners.
Yes.
Yeah, is there any way you could put like a blowhorn on there every time it's in stop? Just like, oh, what the heck?
So if we had some sort of geolocator, so when the service guy leaves the yard, he gets the, you forgot to put it in running schedule mode.
Maybe a zap.
Sounds like something for one of the IoT devices moving forward.
Another one of Greg's ideas we could implement.
So how do you set it to run 24 hours?
If brand new out of the box, if you press speed 1 or speed 2 because they were manually set and you manually turned it on, if you don't shut it off, you don't come back and press another button, it will run virtually forever until it gets another command.
So if there's already if you set existing schedules, though, you pretty much have to clear out the schedules and then.
Well, what they're mentioning is manual mode.
Right.
So manual mode, think of manual mode as you're setting up a speed to run indefinitely. Okay. Then there's egg timers where you're basically saying, hey, I want to run this speed or this flow for this period of time, only for this period of time, set duration. And then there's a schedule where you say start and stop. Okay. If you were to go instead of pump at manual mode, no, like I said, from the factory, the first 2 speeds are set at manual mode, and 3 and 4 are set at egg timers. But you can go in there for any speed and change it from manual to egg timer or schedule, right? And then at that point, if you set one up for manual mode at 3,000 RPMs and hit manual mode, it would run 3,000 RPMs like Brian was saying until another command came in.
Right, without no other schedules, though, within the pump. Correct. So there would have to be no other set schedule.
Correct. There would have to be no other set schedules. By default, when the pump arrives, there are no set schedules in that pump.
Right.
You have the 2 manual modes, 1 and 2 at the 2 lower than half speed, and then you have the 2 speeds that are greater than half speed on egg timers.
Yeah. Because when you're trying to work on a green to clean pool or something, it needs to run 24 hours a day, and a lot of people don't understand that, and we had that issue a lot with our technicians. It was like, you have to clear, if you're going to try to run it for 24 hours, either set it for 23:59 the schedule, or clear the schedule so that it can run for 24 hours.
I think that's especially if you're setting it to run 24 hours because the pool's turning green. I think that would be a great place for flow, because the pool's probably not used to running 24 hours a day, and you might be skimming and doing all kinds of things a lot more than you normally would, and it could adjust for a lot of the junk that's going in, because some of those green pools in Arizona anyway are pretty gnarly. A lot of sludge. So
what kind of warranty comes with the pump, and they have to make a warranty claim? How does that work?
So from a warranty perspective, there are, every pump has a little bit different warranty depending on, if we offer different things. If you buy a package, you get some extended warranty time. But in general, you can go to our website and you can register your product. And from there is a warranty period that's associated with Intelliflo. When installed by a pool professional, a VSF, it has a 3-year warranty. And then if you have an issue with one of those claims, so let's say are you a homeowner or a pool professional, obviously you can then contact us, our tech service department, and work through them, and they'll set up a warranty claim for you. Some of our larger metropolitan areas actually have warranty areas or service centers in there that they can help you set up. A pool professional work through that to set up that service center to get the work taken care of. We do have qualified, what we say, service guys that go out, that we work with other companies. A pool professional of yourselves could be signed up to work with us to become a service center or work with as a service repair people. And then they would work through to process those or those warranty claims to get things fixed.
So we know the Intelliflo, as well as all variable speed pumps, carry up price tags, usually around $1,500 for the customer. What do you think is the best way to explain the features and benefits to a homeowner?
In regards to, obviously, we've talked about energy savings. It's a big deal. I mean, depending on what energy costs are in your location, the pump will pay for itself really quick. I mean, if you do the payback calculations, it's real fast. In fact, Rodney used to do energy audits out there to explain to people. And if you actually go to our website, we have pool calculators that you can put in what your single speed pump is, how much you're running it, and then you can choose an Intelliflo or one of our other variable speed pumps, and it will calculate based on where you're located, how much money you would save from a payback standpoint. The other thing I think to really think about when variable speed is you're talking about a higher quality of product. So from a durability standpoint, that's a big aspect. When you talk about single speed pumps and single speed technology, it's basic in nature when compared. So, and it's running wide open. You think of anything when you're running at its max power and input constantly all day long. Imagine if you ran your car wide open all day long. It's taking a lot of hard abuse and work, whereas in variable speed, being able to slow it down. Plus there's within our drive technology, there are things to help protect it, to make sure you're not messing it up or running it in conditions that can mess it up. Rodney also mentioned the noise. Noise is a big thing as real estate, as homes and real estate has been more and more tight. You have less room between you and your neighbor, and certain HOAs and how they feel about noise. Having a pump that you can slow down and run quieter is a big aspect from that regards, especially if your pool pad happens to be your equipment pad's right on your bedroom window, for heaven's sakes.
Right.
Being able to set those times and adjustments and still get the performance you want with all the additional benefits above and beyond a single speed pump is a real easy sell, in my opinion.
Right.
Rodney, when you were explaining, back then in the day when these higher numbers came out, what were some of the things you were telling people to explain to their homeowners, how to get past that? I will never buy a pump that's $1,500. What were some of those kind of things?
Sure. So you can tell somebody all day long that you're going to save X amount of money, but what we found is you really need to show them. And what we would, in our energy audit classes, we told guys to go out and buy a watt meter, and they could take it out to the job site, put it on the pump, and actually show the customer how many watts that pump is consuming. And say a horse and a half pump consuming 2,000 watts, we would paint the picture, and we had a lot of literature that did the same thing, and explain to the customer, because 2,000 watts doesn't mean anything to the average customer. But we would say, all right, well, Miss Jones, that's like 20 100 watt light bulbs burning in your backyard. And then with a little bit of math and figuring out, all right, if you know how much power is being consumed, and you know how many hours it's running per day, and you know the cost per kilowatt hour of electricity that customer's paying, then you can figure out how much it costs to run that pump per day. So it doesn't stop there, because let's say that pump running at 2,000 watts at 10 cents per kilowatt hour times 10 hours per day, that's $2 per day. That's quick math in my head, by the way. And then if it's running 30 days per month, that's $60 per month on their electrical bill. So getting to that, letting a customer know that, hey, if your electrical bill is $120 a month and $60 of it is your swimming pool pump, then they're like, wow, that's a huge amount of energy savings just for my swimming pool pump. And we did have guys go out to job sites and temporarily put a variable speed pump on the side of the pool and run it so the customer could actually hear it, because as Ryan mentioned, that's another huge selling point of the product. So I don't know that I recommend that, but we do have a demo that a lot of retailers have in their stores, and it's selling all those benefits, the energy efficiency, how quiet it is. And so I think that, is just getting the numbers down on paper so a customer can realize that, okay, this is an investment and it's eventually going to pay for itself. I think that was really the way we figured out to overcome that sticker shock of the product. And as Ryan mentioned, I have 2 Intelliflos on my spa, and they've been on there for 12 years and they're still running. And a lot of times, the pumps that we have nowadays, the motors don't last very long, especially in the Arizona heat. As you guys know, heat kills pumps. It's especially electronics. So telling the customer, this is not the pump that's going to last 3 to 5 years. This is an investment. It's going to pay for itself in 3 to 5 years, and then you're going to be pocketing that money from then on out. So I think that's really the benefits, and really bringing that customer on board is hey, it's an investment.
Right. Another thing that we developed was the cost of doing nothing. And it was frequent that a pool professional would go in and do an energy audit and make a presentation to the consumer with the return on investment. And the consumer would say, well, maybe I don't want to spend that $1,500 right now. Maybe I'll just wait till this fails. And we armed the contractor with the ability to help the consumer understand the impact of waiting till it fails. If they're spending $1,000 every year in energy costs, then that's the cost of doing nothing. Whereas if they make that investment right now, they can begin capturing those savings right away.
We had a guy in one of these seminars who attended another seminar. He got up and told this story. So what he did is he figured out how much it was costing Miss Jones, per se, to run her swimming pool pump. And he also figured out how much she could save by putting a variable speed pump in. And then every month when he would send his bill out to that customer, it would put in there how much money she had wasted by keeping the single speed pump in there. So it's like, okay, what? $60. Now you've wasted $120. Now $180. And so I think Miss Jones finally relented and got the pump. But it's kind of a little tricky way to get some business.
Dude, that is hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've been waiting for this new Capital One card to come in to put on my credit card. I got you. That is hilarious. That's pretty smart.
Yeah.
Smart thinking. And one thing I don't think we put in here, but something that came up quite a bit, how well does the pump do when, a lot of rain comes?
Going back to testing, we do a lot of extreme testing to produce a pump. It is an outdoor product. It gets exposed to a crazy amount of environmental conditions. And then from applications, I've seen them put them right under drain spouts. We don't know where someone's going to install the pump. So we do some extreme testing to make sure that they are performing to the best of their ability. With that said, if you submerge one, it's not designed for submersible. But as far as like natural, just pouring down rain and all that stuff, no issues.
Very cool. Thank you. So the Intelliflo needs 220 voltage. What other variable speed options does Pentair offer if the home does not have the required voltage for the Intelliflo?
So we offer our Superflow VS, which actually will handle lower range 99 all the way up to the top is 253, and it actually will self-adjust, meaning like you don't need to wire it any special way. It basically auto detects your incoming voltage if it's 110 or 230 or whatever. But as long as it's within that range from 99 to 253 volts, it will operate. The Intelliflo is 230 plus or minus 10%. That's one of the things is we definitely recommend when installing an Intelliflo that if you have low voltage or if you have incoming voltage that is not there, look at using a buck booster to make sure you're within the proper voltage range. And I would say that on any of our pumps is if you look at the nameplate voltage rating, making sure that you have your nominal voltage is within that area. Because as we all know, under high usage loads, that voltage can sag significantly, and or sometimes you can get increased voltage that will raise it. So at nominal, being within the nameplate range is very important.
Right.
Yeah, the reason we kind of brought that up, I think, is because we have like older homes in older areas that would not have that 220, 230 voltage. It's good to know what options are there, because if you're just, I think one of the mistakes I made was like selling these pumps before sometimes going to those backyards, and I would close a deal and it would be like, get there and get the installer there. And it's like, yeah, I can't do this. So, it's just important to know, I think, kind of that there are options if something, but always mostly wanted to say it. So go to that backyard and make sure that, what you're selling the customer will actually work for them.
And again, we talk about what we do with our customer space, not only the end consumer, but the pool service guy, everybody is the Superflow VS. The reason it came about was that situation is, we looked at a lot of your older traditional pools, a lot of them are on 110. So if you went to put in a variable speed, you could spend a significant amount of money, not only for the pump, but then having the pad rewired. Well, on a lot of those smaller traditional pools, you didn't need a full 3 horsepower Intelliflo. They weren't trying to do all these crazy things they just wanted to get the savings from the single speed pump. So the Superflow VS is a 1.5 horse pump. It performs in a lot of different pool sizes, but it was designed so you could walk in, have one pump, no matter if it's a 110 or a 230 situation, that you could go in there and wire it up and it would handle it. Now, it does not have all the features and benefits and bells and whistles and some of the capabilities that Intelliflo has, but it was designed for a specific purpose to go into these pools that had 1.5 horsepower single speeds that wanted to go to variable speed technology. They weren't doing a lot of elaborate things with the pump. They just wanted to be able to get the savings, just the speed. And that one of the main things when looking at designing the pump is we noticed that, hey, a guy who has 110 shouldn't spend up to $1,000 to rewire his pad if he doesn't need to. So that's where that pump came from.
And super simple to program.
Yep, very simplistic.
So what type of training is available on the Intelliflo, and how can someone get trained on how to install and then program them?
For our training, we've got 6 trainers right now, and we start our training season in mid-August, and it goes all the way to the end of March the following year. We're usually in a different city every week, so we do quite a bit of traveling. We offer 2 different types of seminars. We offer what we call a university style, and the university style is anywhere from 200 to, say, 450 people at one event. And in that event, we'll have maybe 16 different subjects that a participant can schedule himself or herself for. So when they register for the university, they actually pick the classes that they want to take during that 2-day university. We also have regional events where the class is set up in more of a limited manner, where the service manager and the sales manager for that territory kind of picks the individual classes for the either a 1-day or 2-day event with 1 trainer or possibly 2 trainers, usually limited to 1 or 2 rooms on those type of events. Then you also have individual training with the service managers in each territory. If you're brand new to installing in Intelliflo, you can have the service manager meet you at the job site, and that service manager will help walk you through the programming of the Intelliflo. What we also do in our training seminars is we take the drive. We don't have a full pump there, but we take the drive and we power it with a little transformer, because we do need the 220, and we allow the participants in the university to program the pump so they get used to it at our training seminar. So we don't just talk about it on a PowerPoint slide. We actually physically let them touch the drive and program it and go through the features and menu tree and get used to it.
Additionally, take Arizona, Phoenix area. We have our service center there that actually we do training facility, out of that service center too. So the local individuals that are staffing that, they're fully set up with pumps and have closest for the local guys to come in. And we have a number of service centers in a lot of the larger cities.
Yeah, California, Florida, Texas.
I'm sorry. One other thing is also if you go to YouTube and you put in Pentair pumps, you'll notice that there are a lot of YouTube videos that some from non-Pentair, but there are Pentair YouTube videos out there too about going through basic programming, some of the feature benefits of the pump.
Very good. Thank you.
Then we also have our university site on our website, Pentair.com, that you can get to through Pentair Partners and actually watch videos and take tests to see how well you retain the information. So a business owner can actually have his staff go to Pentair University, watch the videos or presentations, and then take the test and see how well they were involved in watching whatever they were viewing at the time.
Very good. Are you guys training any electricians and different things like that aren't really in the pool industry? Because, there's quite a few times that we'd run into, electrician specific businesses that they did a lot of things with, pool automation and pumps and different things like that. I was just curious if you guys, anybody listening that is maybe a subcontractor for the pool industry and their business is being an electrician.
These trainings are open to anybody, and I think it's great I know we have a lot of electricians around the country that just do pool work, and I know they have attended a lot of these trainings. So I think it's great to even HVAC people who can work on heat pumps and electricians who are doing the jobs, for them to have that extra expertise that they can also, program the automation system while they're there. I think that's a great add-on to a guy's business.
I've done some work with the home performance industry, and these are the folks that will go into a home and do an energy analysis of the whole homes, attic insulation, HVAC equipment. They're really good at selling energy efficiency. That's really their core competency. And so educating those folks on how to identify the energy saving opportunity on a pool, and then trying to introduce them to a pool professional that can actually do the swap, I found is a match that works real well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I'd also like to add that we're just starting up our master services program where participants will go in steps. I think it starts out with copper, gold, and platinum, and they need to do certain things to get to each level. And then when they get to that level, they get patches that they can put onto their shirts or uniforms. They get equipment, and it shows that they've gone through enough training to be able to work on Pentair equipment and do it correctly.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast with us. I know our listeners are really going to get a lot from it and enjoy it. So, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to find out more about our guest or the sponsors of the show, you can check them out on the links we have provided in the write-up below. We have also provided links to our social media platforms, so please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our tag is Pool Chasers. If the podcast has brought you any value, please do what you can to support us through our Patreon page by going to patreon.com/poolchasers. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to be updated each time a new episode is released. One last thing. If you're not yet in our Facebook group, join it today to be surrounded by like-minded individuals who are all trying to better the industry. Thank you all for the support. We appreciate your time and your ear.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.